the connection we had, I think it was spending a lot of time in the sauna before practice, just talking to him. And I would say to me, it was almost more valuable just the time I spent with him when I wasn't wrestling than it was when I was wrestling, because I started realizing that I took myself too seriously. I think if you're not willing to laugh at yourself and realize that we all have kind of a goofball side to us, and then I think you can just be too intense in life. And I think that was me. I think I was becoming too intense. It's like, I'm going to Penn. I want to be an Ivy League student. I'm going to go to the Wharton School of Business. I want to be an All-American. I want to be NCAA champion. Then I want to graduate and I want to be Olympic champion. I think there was just this intenseness about me that was holding me back. And I think I was putting too much expectation on myself in every practice and every competition, and used that term earlier, pressure. I think that was putting too much pressure on myself, which is, again, was causing anxiety. And I think what Dave really taught me is that, like, Brandon, you need to take a deep breath and relax a little bit. Sometimes it's fun to come in the wrestling room, not warm up for 30 minutes and run around in circles. Sometimes it's fun to just get a cup of tea and come sit in the sauna and we're sweating, aren't we? We kind of stretch a little bit. Now let's just go out there and start sparring a little bit, and let's have a fun practice. Right? Like, I just had never, that's not how I did it in high school. That's not how I started kind of doing it at Penn. It always had to be like, we got to run around in circles. We got to get really warm, really hot, before we got there and wrestle. And then we're going to drill really hard, and then we're going to wrestle hard. But Dave inserted this idea of, now we call it sparring, that I'd never really been part of before. And that's where, when you spar, it's really important that you got to take the pride out of it. Because when you spar, it's not about who won or lost. It's about the creativity of getting better, putting yourself in situations that you wouldn't necessarily put yourself in when you wrestle live. And learning that from him, nowadays, I would say that was crucial for me as a wrestler. But now as a coach who's been coaching, 12 years now, that's a really important part of what I do as a coach. I spend a lot of time with our guys sparring. A lot of times we have matches on Friday. On Thursdays, we spend most of our time sparring. We don't wrestle live at all. And I think that's been a really important part of Team USA's trajectory of becoming one of the best teams in the world. Is, I think, for so many years it was all about you drill or you wrestle hard. And I think for a long period of time now, Team USA, colleges, high school wrestlers, I think even youth wrestlers are starting to learn how to do this now. They start to realize that there's also this other thing called sparring, play wrestling. Yeah. That's actually really, really important for development. But it takes, again, you have to kind of tone down the intensity a little bit. Learn to laugh at yourself a little bit. Don't get upset if you get taken down. Don't get upset if you get turned. You got to swallow your pride and enjoy. The key word, joy. Enjoy the sport.
Sorry, what was the story where Dave spilled tea on you in the sauna?
Yeah. I think that showed me that Dave was really intrigued by wanting to feel and understand other people, and he wasn't just self-centered. So what I mean by that is that we're in the sauna one time, we get some tea, and we're kind of sitting up there, and he kind of hops up on the sauna with his tea, and when he hops up on the sauna, and the tea kind of spills out and it lands right on my leg. And of course, this is a really, really hot tea. It just got done brewing. And so this tea spills on my leg, and I was like, oh, holy crap. I'm like, man, that's hot, right? And he looks at me, he's like, it's that hot? And I was like, yeah, it's hot. And so he takes the tea after he spills it on me accidentally, and he pours it on his own leg. He takes the scalding tea and he pours it on his quad. Right when he does, he's like, dang. He's like, that is hot. Right? So it was like a simple thing that to me became a lot deeper, because like, who does that, but he accidentally spilled tea on me. It burnt me. And he wanted to kind of like, if I said it was hot, I think it was like he wanted to see is he being maybe a wimp? Is it really that hot? And I think it was just kind of the empathy is probably a good word. Yeah. He wanted to have that empathy with me as a friend and as a training partner. And what I've come to find out, I've learned this from Coach Roger Rain at Penn, that we talk about this a lot, is I think the greatest attribute a coach can have is empathy. And a lot of people want to say, oh, he's lots of experience and knows a lot of moves, and he's great with periodization. And okay, a lot of things are important at being a coach. We know this. But I think empathy, really putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, understanding where they came from. They came from a broken home, right? They came from a wrestling club where there was really hard nosed and there wasn't a lot of love put on them. There wasn't a lot of encouragement given. It was a lot of like being really critical. So they heard a lot of criticism. Like understanding that about your athletes, about their family situation, where they came from, where they grew up. I think it's really important to maximizing your ability to be the best coach you can be. And again, that little example with Dave, that taught me that.
It seems silly, but now you say it makes a lot of sense. Where were you when you heard the news?
So Dave and I, and I want to say Dave and I just gone to practice to Foxcatcher on Thursday, right? So I'd spent some time wrestling with him. I'd spent some time wrestling with some of the other guys. I think there were some Bulgarians out there or something. I don't remember everybody I wrestled with that day. I just remember that I'd just been out there on that Thursday, and I typically went on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then on Friday, Penn was wrestling Columbia that night. And so I remember coming down to Hutch, the Palestra, where Penn was going to wrestle Columbia. And I remember walking into the locker room, and I was just I wasn't wrestling that year, right? So I was taking that year off. So I wasn't going to compete. So I was just going to be there to support the team. And I remember Coach Reyna walking towards me, and just a look on his face I'd never seen before in him. I mean, I'd known him, I guess, a few years by then, but he had a look on his face that I'd never seen before. And he just walked up to me and just a real kind of somber brokenness, shock on his face, and just said, "Hey, Dave Patrick's been murdered." And I was like, what? What do you mean he's been murdered? Again, I was just out there. I just saw him. Just saw the guy. And he's like, John DuPont pulled up in front of his house, Brandon, and Dave was out in front of the house, and he shot him. He blew him away, and he killed him. And I was just, when you hear something like that, it's just really hard to believe. It's hard for it to kind of transfer into your brain at that moment. And so I would say I was in shock, and I think everybody who ended up hearing that news that particular day, that particular night, the next day, all around the world, it was just I think people were in shock because they thought, how could that really happen? How could one of our heroes, how could one of the best wrestlers in the United States history just walk out in front of his house on the guy's property who owns it, and that guy just shoot him? Like, why? Like, why would that happen? I think then you start asking those questions, like, why would he do that? And then you go from shock, I think, and then for me, then my next emotion was, then it was anger. Then, like, you're just really angry at John DuPont, and it's like, you just want to beat the crap out of him, regardless how old he is, frail he is. You just murdered one of my heroes. So like anger seeps in. And then after that anger, then I think you go to the next emotion. Then you're just kind of trying to seek big picture, seeking to understand why something like that would happen. And I don't even know if we still, to this day, 25 years later, I don't know if we know the real answer to it. And John DuPont's, passed away now. But I would say that Nancy and Xander and Danny, the Schultz family, watching how Nancy and Xander and Danny have handled that, and in many ways the sense of like, I'm gonna forgive him, and I'm gonna move on, and I'm not gonna carry that bitterness with me for the rest of my life. Seeing their leadership in that, I think, has inspired us to want to handle it